Today's guest is honestly incredible. Stacy Igel started her company, Boy Meets Girl, out of simply putting good back into the world. And she's never stopped. In addition to being a founder, she also has a podcast. She's the co-creator and co-host of the podcast, #MomsGotThis, which was featured on Forbes as a women-created podcast everyone should be listening to right now, and in less than a year ranked in the top 25 on iTunes. She just authored her first book, Embracing the Calm and the Chaos: How to Find Success in Business and Life Through Perseverance, Connection, and Collaboration, which is about her entrepreneurial journey and provides practical tips and takeaways for others to use in life and business. Now, Boy Meets Girl is a global impact brand known for its iconic double silhouette logo and purposeful, edgy, contemporary athleisure wear. Stacy and Boy Meets Girl seek to promote the message that confidence and courage are trends that never go out of style. Stacy has an exclusive fashion partnership with Paris's Colette, Bergdorf Goodman, Roots Canada, Saks Fifth Avenue, Bloomingdale's Target, NBA's Chicago Bulls, and Atlanta Hawks, just to name a few. She collaborates with musical artists, athletes, and activists making an impact, as well as organizations including the Young Survival Coalition, Bully Bust, Human Rights Watch, Glam for Good, Youth Over Guns, and many others. Today's conversation, honestly, only scratches the surface with Stacy. I'm so excited for you to meet her, and honestly, I can't wait to have her back. Come on in and meet Stacy Igel. Welcome back to another episode of Dear Found Her. I am so excited about today's guest. It is long overdue. She has so much in her arsenal. I don't know how we're going to get through it all in 30 to 35 minutes, but we will do our best. Stacy Igel is here. She is the founder and chief creative officer of Boy Meets Girl, and I am just so excited to have you here. So thank you so much, Stacy, for your time and for being here.
Thank you. And I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And I know this will be like part 1, part 2, part 3.
I mean, it's for sure going to have to be part 1 because you have so much going on. I don't even know how we can cover it all. But I want to start with the brand. I want to start with Boy Meets Girl, what it is, how you started it, and as briefly as you can, because I want to really get to the meat and potatoes of everything that you're doing. But I want everyone to understand what it is that you do.
Okay, great. So I'm from Chicago, and I founded Boy Meets Girl, a global mission-led brand in 2001 in New York City. So it's Boy Meets Girl in New York, we call it. Well, I like to say Boy Meets Girl in New York, but with the Chicago heart. And the brand has always been an impact brand. And what does that mean is we have been sharing voices, bringing people together, working with nonprofits globally to elevate those stories and give insight into what is happening globally for our consumer who might not know about it. And how did this happen? I started in 2001. I was a designer from the womb, designed all my friends' clothes growing up in Chicago, went to University of Wisconsin, triple majored in design, business, retailing, made my shirts and sold them in stores and off my friends' backs in college, and came to New York and worked for Izod, Ali Tahari. And then 2001, I called my parents and said, I'm leaving my 401k job. I'm going to start my own business. I've got a freelance job happening to support myself, to pay my rent. And I'm doing this. And I got accepted into this show called the Workshop Trade Show, which was 60 designers. It was me, Peter Somm, Rebecca Minkoff, Gary Graham, Liz Collins, all these greats, and in the Chelsea market. And this was supposed to happen the week of 9/11. And so as a young 24-year-old, I believe I was, faced with a terrorist attack in New York City, friends who had family or friends they had lost, and just witnessing this as a young, woman, a young girl, was really this, where we are today of just sadness. And starting a business in the midst of this was like, how the hell is that going to happen? Because in the beginning, we were all that week, obviously the show's postponed, and then everybody's really wanting myself to be on the ground floor and help. And that's all I wanted to do. I come from no family in the fashion business. I come from a lot of people, physician assistants, doctors, first responders, and no one who knew fashion. So for me to be in fashion, was very like, I didn't even think about it at that moment. And then I decided that I would go through with that trade show that happened a month later. And if I did go through with it when I decided I would, that whatever I was creating at that time, which was my first designs, would be donated to the American Red Cross and victims of 9/11 and their families. And that would be the only way that I could continue or even start. So as we know, we lost so many people. And as we know, businesses went out of business. And for some reason, I went into business. And that first trade show that ended up being with those 60 designers and showcasing that collection was one of the busiest trade shows I've ever had in my career. And I had a lot of fashion within that collection that was being designed for 4th of July that had Americana vibes. And so oddly enough, that was on trend. And so there I was. My mom was at the booth with me, an FIT intern who became an employee, and Bergdorf Goodman walks in. I was at the bathroom. My mother is freaking out because she lived in Staten Island and in the east side before she moved to Chicago with my dad and loved Bergdorf Goodman and was freaking out the Bergdorf Goodman team was there. And meanwhile, I'm a thrifter, had never really gone to Bergdorf Goodman and couldn't afford Bergdorf Goodman. So when she was like, it's Bergdorf Goodman, I was like, okay, whatever, sure, and then I laid out my clothes and my Boy Meets Girl Street, aesthetic and my flowy hippie tops and my cinch shirts with the ribbon, and they bought the whole line. And that whole line was donated to American Red Cross and victims of 9/11 and their family. And all of a sudden I was in business.
So you started business. It wasn't an accidental business, but you started business out right away to make an impact. That was the catalyst behind your business. That was the foundation that you laid, which I think is, we always hear talk about laying this foundation and staying true to your mission. And that's obviously what you did and continue to do today.
Continue to do. Since that first show, I've continued to do that with primarily every collection that we do, from working with anti-bullying with the National School Climate Center since 2009, working with breast cancer awareness with the Young Survival Coalition for Breast Cancer, Immigrants Are Us with the Human Rights Watch, raising awareness with the Trevor Project, Center in Halstead in Chicago with the Chicago Bulls, just endless. I didn't realize at the time what I would become as a voice in this mission and this give back realm. You see brands today start to give back, which is awesome and amazing. And then you see people, in COVID start to figure it out and want to do things. It's been just who I have been, and it's been the ethos of what I do. And so the many nonprofits, many brands, many companies come to me to elevate their companies to share a mission. And it's a beautiful thing to be part of that.
And so now is it safe to say you would classify your whole collection as athleisure, and it's athleisure with a mission?
Athleisure with a mission. People call me streetwear as well. So streetwear, athleisure, whatever day it is. When I'm in Paris at Colette opening a line next to streetwear brands, they call me a streetwear brand.
So walk us through how it works. How do you pick the mission, or how does the mission pick you? Because you can't obviously, I'm sure you are the type of person you want to help everyone. I know that. I can tell that just by, the short conversations we've had and the short interactions we've had on Instagram over, the last year or so. But how does that transpire in your business? Because, there has to be a line drawn somewhere, right? Where is that line?
So in the beginning, it really was important for me to for myself and the brand to pick what was speaking to the youth. So, youth culture is really who we touch. And it's a very big trend these days, but that was always who we were talking to. And what does that mean is like sharing these missions to a younger generation so that they can learn earlier and discuss these things. And so for me, my 2 pinpoints in the very beginning of the brand was really discussing anti-bullying, which was pre social media and the digital platforms. And there was forums back then, and then YouTube, and then Instagram, and then a Facebook fan page, but really seeing the rise of bullying in the youth. And then Young Survival Coalition for Breast Cancer was seeing the active rise of breast cancer in women under 30. And so really working with these organizations and sharing those missions through the brand. And then over time, like you said, so many people started to come to me to want to work with their organizations. And we wanted to always keep what we did true to what we were standing for. And so for me, anti-bullying spans out to anti-hate, anti-racism, anti-Semitism, F silence, we talk about stopping hate continuously. And that really formed into Immigrants Are Us. With the Human Rights Watch came to me to do this big campaign. And within that campaign was talking about that we're all immigrants. We all come from a line of family who have come from somewhere. And on the back of that shirt was a drawing by Molly Crabapple, that had, diversity of everybody who comes to New York City. And it was a beautiful sketch of that. And then, there's just, of course, I wanted to talk about, pride and sharing, not to be hateful there. And so there's different organizations, Florida Equality, Trevor Project, Center of Halstead. So when the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls came to me to partner with them, one of the first brands to cross promote in our branding and to bring mission to the organization, they came to me to do that with the organizations I had been working with. So that was with the National Center for Social Emotional Education and Anti-Bullying, and for the Bully Bus program. And then with Chicago Bulls, we worked with the Center of Halstead to educate people locally. So really every mission that I've done, or anyone we align to, or any artist we align to, or any musician we align to, it really is sharing the mission with us and wants to share their stories of how they can help others. And, and through that's led in also like sustainability with clothing. Like I've always really worked hard to educate my buyers on using certain fabrications, since like Urban Outfitters deal in 2009 we used Tencel, we used organic, we used, down to the hang tags being recycled paper. So was that important to them then? Probably not. Is it important today? More so, but like really being an advocate for that. So it's been like what one, I care about, and two, what is so important to educate our consumer on. And so when people came to me over COVID, I had a collaboration with a designer out of Brooklyn for what had happened in Beirut. And that was definitely like, I don't think a lot of our consumers knowing what's going on there. But I was like, this is a great time to bring this to our consumer. We donated about, I think, $2,000 or $3,000 to Impact Lebanon. And the shirt had in Arabic, Beirut, 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 love, love, love. And it was a beautiful illustration by an amazing artist, Annabelle Dow. And so, that's something that was newer for me to dive into, but it was aligned to everything we had been doing.
Okay, so I want to kind of paint a picture like of how much you have grown as a brand before I want to get into the advocacy piece of it as well in your voice. But you talked about at the start of this how you started by getting into Bergdorf and they bought the whole collection. Like, can you explain the growth of the brand and where are you now? And can you just kind of paint a picture for how big this brand is now?
Yes. So from 2001 to 2015, the brand had been a wholesale brand, which is selling direct to a store. We did about 6 trade shows a year for 10 years in Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, Vegas, Dallas, and that is just, you're plopping down, you're selling your product at my first trade show, showing the line, selling to stores across the country and retailers. And when Bergdorf's happen, that's like a very big store in New York, and what everybody sort of looks as if you're in Bergdorf's, people want you. So what happened from there, a lot of press came, and everybody wanted my business, like in their stores. So from Bloomingdale's, Saks, Lord and Taylor at the time, I don't even know, Lord and Taylor's around, like all these department stores, Nordstrom's. And again, I was the beginning of growing something. And I talk about that when we'll get to my book, but like, where I was to today was like finding the factories, finding the factor, how am I going to find finance for the company, hiring, firing, finding location to like have an office that was enough that, that I could afford it and, be in the garment centers, all these pieces of building something from the ground up. And the main thing that was happening as I was building is Boy Meets Girl is, a boy and girl logo silhouette. And I also own Girl Meets Girl and Boy Meets Boy, but I was growing the asset, which is the IP, and spending a lot of money on the protection of that IP. And what does that mean if you have a logo, is protecting in class 25, which is t-shirts and clothing and apparel, and then class 3 is perfume, and then you get the global rights, which is the European protocol, and getting in for all different countries because lots of people like to copy. And so I was growing the asset, and what I ultimately wanted to do, and partner D, because I have partner A, B, C, and D, was Munir. Munir's my partner, but I talk about that in the book because it wasn't series A, B, and C. And so partner D and I, Munir and I, always believed that the asset that I was growing, we would license eventually. And partner D always believed that we would license the brand eventually globally. And what that means is, so when I'm selling to the stores, I'm producing the goods, I'm shipping the goods, I have the warehouse, I have the factories, or I, subcontract them out and we ship it. We take all the responsibility on ourselves, the finances, and we ship the goods, right? That's wholesale. And then now we have direct to consumer, where we are selling online. That's also producing the goods and shipping the goods, right? And then licensing is where you are giving someone the rights to your brand. They are producing the goods. They have a team to design, and you do approvals, and you get paid a royalty. You get sometimes an upfront minimum guarantee, and some of the greats license, right? So if I look at like my past study of history of brands, Ralph Lauren in the very beginning was licensing every category. Halston was licensing every category. Donna Karan was licensed, and all the partners that I have along the way also had licensed big brands as well. And so I was seeing that around me and saying, I've been growing this brand asset, and everybody's wearing this through the press and the New York Fashion Week shows we did and the collaborations we did. And so we knew that there'd be a time where I could license it, like a Hello Kitty, like a Care Bears, like Strawberry Shortcake, who I've just collaborated with. So where I'm at right now is, since 2015, when I partnered with my partner Munir, we came together and I did an underground New York Fashion Week show where I showed, this 14 years of what the brand was. And we never said where we were, but just to give you the depth of what it was that we had subway dancers performing above ground. They were a nonprofit we were donating to. I had collaborated with Jeff Staple on some shirts that had his pigeon in it. I had Justine Skye performing. She was a Brooklyn artist. I had an artist with it's not Phil Jackson. That is the Chicago Bulls. Sorry. Got my Chicago Bulls. Randy Jackson. Randy Jackson had an artist from Singapore. And I had another artist who was, it was the dancers, the Justine Skye, and the artist from Singapore. And so it showed international, it showed nonprofit work, it showed dance and creative and musicians that I've always been working with into one room to show who we were. And that night, and I had just really joined forces in those few months with Munir. And that night, Colette in Paris reached out to me. So I had some international success in the beginning, but I wasn't shipping tons. I had done Harvey Nichols in Dubai, but again, wholesale. But Sarah from Colette, who's a creative vision, reaches out into our sales inbox and is like, I'd love to carry the line at Colette. And it was forwarded to me by one of my employees. And I'm like, is that Colette? It's like Bergdorf's, right? And I forwarded it to Munir and I was like, I think this is Colette. He's like, you got to respond. And I was like, okay. So I was like, is this Colette? And she's like, yes, this is Colette. And I was like, okay. So what happened with that was just like I talked about Bergdorf Goodman putting me on the map. I then went out to Paris to launch this line with Colette. And it was like this international exposure that opened me up for really prime, international licensing and licensing in general, which is really interesting that this one store, just like Bergdorf's, could give that exposure to. And what happened was, unfortunately, I don't know why this happens, but at that launch was the night that night after my launch was the night of the 3 attacks in Paris. And what's so crazy is I was underground and didn't know what was going on. So people couldn't find me for hours. But here I was again in this attack, this terrorist attack, 14 years later, launching my brand in this establishment. And Sarah and I formed this really beautiful friendship and making sure we were all okay. And again, I continued to raise awareness what was happening and continuing the collections that we're giving back. And it just was this exposure that again showcased who we were as a brand in the midst of fucking chaos and insanity.
Well, and I mean, obviously that's no one ever plans for that, right? But
No.
Of course not. But I think you giving back and you using and you moving forward to educate and to continue to support does speak to the foundation of your brand. And you really haven't deviated from that ever. I mean, you look at every single thing that you've ever done and you harness what's going on in the world around you to fight back against indecencies around the world. And I think that's it's really commendable because it's a hard spot to be in, right?
It's a hard spot. I mean, I through building the brand, I had a lot of people say, why are you doing that? Why are you working with that person? Why are you shooting them in a campaign? Why are you showing sizes? Why are you showing, gender? Why, you go through the history of Boy Meets Girl and you see from day one, we were doing what everyone's preaching doing now, which is great. I'm glad they're all doing it. But it was just normal for us to be doing this.
Well, so one of the things that, and I know there's so much we can talk about. You have a podcast and you have so many things going on, but you also have a book, which I think is amazing that you are an author, Embracing the Calm and the Chaos. And, a big kind of the catalyst to me asking this question is you have become a voice for advocacy. I mean, you are an activist and I don't think it's on accident activist. I mean, maybe a little in the beginning, you didn't really necessarily plan for your brand to be, launched in conjunction with the terrorist attacks and it was, but obviously this speaks to who you are as a person. You are a caring soul and you want the best for everyone. And that is evident in the last hour you and I have been on this conversation. But, all of this experience has lended itself to you being able to have that voice to write this book.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can't write a book without a story, and you have an incredible story.
Yeah. I think, someone asked me the other day, the process of, writing the book or selling the book or, everything. And for me, it was so important for me to share the build and help future entrepreneurs and people who are in the midst of business or people are changing jobs. It wasn't just like a young entrepreneur. It's about really every entrepreneur at any stage. And people who are what they call, I just learned on a panel the other day with a girl from a jewelry line. It's called an entrepreneur. Someone who's inside the organization, but is like, believes in the brand so much, like that's also for them. So for me, it was the timing was like, okay, now is my time to give back and share this. And the process was, and this is not easy for authors. And I was in a very special place that it was like from concept to sell was like the shortest in my career of 20 years. Like find an agent, have a ghostwriter, put it together, like organize it, go out to sell and sell it. And that doesn't happen as an author or anybody. It doesn't happen as.
So that was your process as an author.
My process as an author in selling the book was a much shorter journey than like a business.
A clothing, your apparel.
Right. I mean, yes, my first trade show was Bergdorf Goodman, but so that was a nice process, but the process of a transaction doesn't usually go so smoothly. Right. And, but I've been writing in my journals for 20 years. I've been speaking to students. I created Boy Meets Girl University to give back and share and help students who want to be in fashion from all walks of life, and, work with the Lower East Side Girls Club and have them part of a New York Fashion Week to shadow everybody who is on that show and really learn about what it entails to run a show. And so for me, this was a natural piece to what I wanted to do to give back.
So what can people expect when they read the book?
They can expect tons of vulnerability because I don't think I definitely had never shared a lot of my stories. But also through adversity, how you can keep moving and how you can persevere and how connections and collaborations can really help you on your journey. And that as an entrepreneur, whatever, process you are in that journey, sometimes is very lonely and super hard. And that there is a way to get past it with many stories that I share. And also I share stories of, I have 33 people in my book. I have 16 interviews in the back of the book with people who have either patted me on the back on my journey, who have worked with me, had been a best friend, who had the same kind of roadmap as me, but in a different setting. He's an actor, I'm not, and what we did to get to where we are, and that you can be, in one store and then you can be in a million stores, and the journey is not always overnight. I have a quote in my book that is a joke, and it's about, you want me to tell you? So there's a man, he lives on the beach. He has the same routine every day, picks up his coffee, goes on a walk. One day he's going to walk on the beach. He's in a really, really bad mood, and there's something nagging at his leg, and he's like, oh, this really hurts. And he looks down and he sees that it's like the snail, and he takes the snail and he's like, ugh, and he throws it far, far away. And about 10 years later, he gets his coffee, opens the door to get his newspaper. He looks down and he sees the snail, and the snail says, hey man, what'd you do that for?
Love it.
So the
Love it.
journey, that's 10 years later. So what I say to anyone who's building or doing or in the process of leaving and changing and doing, or as a senior exec at a company who wants to get to the next level, like that nothing happens overnight, and that there's a process, and there are things you have to learn, and there's highs and lows, and there's firing, and there's fights, and there's, anger, and there's happiness, and there's, accomplishments, but it's just, it's not black and white.
Anyone who has been a Dear Found Her listener, or who knows me from Instagram, or who has been around for a while, can obviously know and see why I adore you so much, because you speak my language. I mean, really and truly, like everything that you just said is like I say all the time. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a process. It's not a race. It's a marathon. It's like it really is a long game in order to be successful as an entrepreneur. And then also what you said, I love what you said, is that like it is so lonely and it is so hard, and it does take the connections and the community both around you and within you in order to do this. You cannot do this without those things. And so, I think to have this book as a resource for any entrepreneur, I'm so happy to have you here talking about it. And I hope everyone goes out and buys it, because these are the things that like we all need to know as we're building businesses. And the fact that you have shared your experience that has been decades. I mean, you think back to 2001. I mean, that was a long time ago. That was like,
I'm like an OG vintage. Like, I'm really hot on TikTok.
But that's amazing. Like, it's amazing,
Right? It's crazy.
Like, I love
I'm
it.
like, oh my God, they like found Gilmore Girls from like Lorelai's wearing it on one of the episodes, and there was no social media, right? So it's like viral on there. Or like Nina Dobrev was with a group of the cast of Vampire Diaries and Boy Meets Girl, and was in a mugshot, and it's like, oh my God, I'm like, my 16-year-old niece is like, oh my God, Nina Dobrev is wearing your shirt. It's like amazing, right? I have a new life.
And like at the time, like it was not like as big of a deal as it is now. I mean, it was a big deal, but it was probably like on the what's the page in Us magazine where you're like what they're wearing, or like see, I don't even remember what
it
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, like that's what it was, I mean, it was like to be in that like when, from 2001 to 2010, 2011, that was where you wanted to be, was like an In Touch and Us and whatever.
Yes.
And like, but it's like, now it's like you're having the second wind, and it's like a resurrection of all of your press, because it really is amazing.
It's amazing. I'm actually going to Germany. I've never been to Germany next week. I'm going to Barcelona, Germany, and Naples, Italy. And I said to my team, I have a licensing team in Barcelona, and I said, use this picture, because this is Lorelai is very hot in Germany, and we get tons of orders on our website from Germany. And I was like, oh my God, it's the truth. It's amazing. So yes, it's sometimes I look and I'm like, see people doing things on TikTok that I never got to do because I was building in Union City and like at the factories and coming on the bus at like midnight, coming back, shipping packages, like doing all these things without Shopify, no scanner, like the UPS man, like, and if I had a camera and like could show what I was doing, it would be like viral now, but
that is why you have this book, because so you can share those stories. And it's like, that's what I just said to you, is like, you can't write a book without the stories, and you have the stories, a lot of stories, and a lot of amazing stories that weren't preserved on social media. And I think that that's so important, that you are sharing that knowledge and sharing that wisdom. And I feel, like you're going to have to come back, because we really have just scratched the surface. Like we really have just scratched the surface. So the homework I'm going to give everyone is to go out and buy Stacy's book, Embracing the Calm and the Chaos, because I know we all can definitely gain from it. And before I let you go, I do want to ask you the same thing that I ask everyone upon wrapping up. And that is, and this is going to be good coming from you, what are 3 actionable tips that you would give to an entrepreneur just starting out?
Never compare yourself to others. Always believe in what you set out to do, and customer service is king.
Stacy Igel, founder and chief creative officer of Boy Meets Girl. Again, you have to come back. This is not the end of this conversation, because this is like
Authors Against Anti-Semitism. I forgot to talk about that.
Well, but you're going to have to come back, or we're going to talk about it on an Instagram live when we promote this episode.
That's right. That'll be awesome. Yes.
But I'm so proud of you, and I am so happy to know you, and I'm so happy that we're connected. And like, seriously, I feel like I've been hearing about you for years, and I'm just so glad that we're in each other's orbits now. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and I can't wait to meet you in Chicago or New York.
Either one. I'm sure you'd agree with me that Stacy is simply incredible. And in case you missed it in our earlier episodes this season, we're going to be closing out each episode of season 3 with our number one takeaway from the day's conversation. My takeaway from Stacy today is to go with your gut and follow your heart. She didn't originally plan to create a mission-driven business, but when it happened, she saw her impact and she kept going. When you're in business for the right reasons, the success and the money will follow. Thanks so much, Stacy, for being here today. We've been getting so much love for season 3, and you have all been so gracious with your time, leaving us some amazing reviews. Gal BM recently shared, "I'm so glad I found Lindsay and absolutely love her podcast. I've gotten so many gems of tips, and a bonus is that she brings such fantastic energy to the podcast." Thank you so much, Gal BM, for that glowing review. If you liked today's conversation, I would love it if you also left a 5-star rating and a review so that others can find this conversation. All you have to do is go to ratethispodcast.com/Dear Found Her, or click the link in the show notes to leave a review wherever it is that you podcast. If you know someone who we should meet, please send them our Meet a Founder link that is in the show notes. We'll introduce them to our community on our social media and our website later this year. But for now, I want to thank you for listening and thank you for being here. Have a great rest of the week, and we will see you on Tuesday.